under the blood, me say me under the blood. Jesus cover me under the blood, me say me under the blood.
What if the real power in Jamaica isn't in government offices, but behind pulpits? These pastors aren't just spiritual leaders, they're empire builders. From controlling the masses to shaping elections and owning billion-dollar institutions, you're about to see the richest black pastors in Jamaica and how they secretly own the country. Number 10. Bishop Noel Jones. Bishop Noel Jones stands tall as probably the richest black pastor with Jamaican roots. Born January 31, 1950, in Spanish town St. Catherine, the same town soaked in political violence during the 1980 election, Jones escaped Jamaica but went on to conquer America. In 1994, he took over Greater Bethany Community Church, later rebranded as City of Refuge. Under his leadership, membership exploded from roughly 1,000 to over 17,000 by the late 2000s. That's exactly how empires are built. You see, in the U.S. megachurch ecosystem, pastors often command six-figure salaries, with industry estimates ranging from $150,000 to $300,000 per year. Jones sits at the top of that food chain. He's published multiple books in his since the 1990s, and book royalties create a reliable secondary income stream. He frequently speaks at conferences charging $50 to $200 per attendee, sometimes more for VIP access. Multiply that by thousands of attendees multiple times per year. Do the math. In 2011, a public health scare involving a ruptured appendix briefly halted ministry operations, revealing how financially centralized everything was around him. That alone slowed down his ministry and nearly collapsed it, but it didn't last. That's how indispensable he'd made himself. Jones's entire media company sells hundreds of sermons across DVD, CD, and streaming formats. Digital ministry income flows 24/7. Despite being US-based, Jones regularly preaches in Jamaica. Events at the National Arena and major Kingston churches draw thousands. His psychological grip on Jamaica remains unshaken. His net worth is publicly estimated between $5 and $6 million, though never independently audited. The real number is probably higher, much higher. Jones stands tall as the Jamaican who built an empire abroad, proof that you can leave the island, but never lose your claim to it. Well, you might think he's the only successful Jamaican pastor, but wait until you see this next pastor. Number 9. Apostle Bishop Dr. Delford Davis. Delford Davis is way more than just a pastor. He's a whole conglomerate. In 1983, he founded Power of Faith Ministries in Portmore, St. Catherine. Today, the main Portmore church seats over 5,000 people, making it one of the largest sanctuary capacities in Jamaica. But Davis didn't stop at buildings. In 2014, he launched PFM Family Television, giving him 24/7 nationwide broadcast access. That's his own television station, not a program slot, a station. His sermons, his message, his brand pumping into Jamaican homes around the clock. For decades, Davis has run the Voice of Power broadcast across key stations including Love FM, Gospel JA, and TBC. His media footprint is inescapable. PFM's U.S. branch operates out of Lauderhill, Florida, expanding cross-border revenue streams that pull American dollars into Jamaican operations. He oversees a ministry staff numbering in the hundreds, from pastors to media personnel to administrators. The Portmore complex includes a multi-purpose center, media facilities, administrative buildings, and schools. Davis hosted Jamaica's National Day of Prayer events multiple times, positioning him alongside cabinet ministers and the Governor General. During the COVID-19 lockdown in 2020, PFM's live streams reached hundreds of thousands globally, an unprecedented spike in digital influence. His major crusades and conventions regularly draw 10,000-plus attendees. His wife, Dr. Petrova Davis, co-owns and co-leads the ministry, creating a documented husband and wife power structure that mirrors political dynasties. You see, Davis controls infrastructure that politicians rely on for votes. He commands audiences that advertisers pay millions to reach. He has built a religious empire with the operational structure of a corporation and the influence of a political party. Davis represents the modern megachurch pastor, part preacher, part CEO, part media mogul, all in one. And in Jamaica, that makes him one of the most powerful men in the country. But even Davis's empire, as massive as it is nothing close to what this next pastor has built from scratch. Number 8. Reverend Al Miller. Al Miller is the pastor everyone knows and no one forgets. He's the senior pastor of Fellowship Tabernacle, founded in 1986 in Kingston. However, his controversy started in 2010 when he was criminally charged after being found in the company of fugitive Christopher Dudas Koch during one of Jamaica's most explosive national crises. That scandal dominated headlines for months. He was slapped with a fine of 1 million Jamaican dollars in 2017 for that same incident, but the damage to his reputation never came. Why? Because Miller had already positioned himself as untouchable. Back in 2006 and 2009, Miller publicly stated that Jamaica needed a new political direction and hinted at forming a political movement himself. He's a known ally of business and political figures, appearing beside both PNP and JLP leaders at national prayer events. His sermons frequently discuss governance, corruption, and leadership with a candor most clergy avoid. This is one man who's never afraid to call out the people in power. Miller led national marches against crime and violence in the 2000s and 2010s with crowds numbering in the thousands. He's been featured regularly on TVJ, CVM, and radio talk shows as a political and spiritual commentator. His church, Fellowship Tabernacle's property in St. Andrew, owns multiple buildings in its names: sanctuary, youth centers, education spaces. It's a massive compound that screams permanence and power. Despite his controversies, Miller's congregation remains several thousand strong, showing you just how powerful he is. His critics call him reckless, supporters call him courageous. But everyone agrees on one thing: Al Miller has influence that most politicians would kill for, and he's wielded it without ever running for office. He's the pastor who proved you don't need a ballot to shape a nation. You just need the nerve to stand where others run. However, having a stake in a nation is one thing, cross-border influence is another, and the next pastor mastered both. Number 7. Dr. Milton G. Gregory. Milton Gregory spent over 34 years in Jamaican SDA pastoral and administrative roles before migrating to the United States, but his departure didn't weaken his influence, it multiplied it. Gregory pastored major churches in Kingston, including New Haven SDA and Andrews Memorial Circuits, and served in the East Jamaica Conference, one of Jamaica's strongest SDA regions. His track records are just stunning, running large evangelistic series since the 1990s, often bringing in 100 to 300 baptisms per campaign. That's what you'll call a bumper harvest of souls. Today, Gregory serves as senior pastor at Victory SDA Church in New York, a congregation with a strong Caribbean presence. But he hasn't abandoned Jamaica. He's a sought-after guest speaker at major SDA conventions in Jamaica, Canada, and the United States. He conducts marriage and leadership seminars that attract Jamaican diaspora audiences across North America, pulling in crowds that generate both influence and income. The Inter-American division of SDAS recognized him for over 3 decades of service, and his mentorship shaped several pastors who now run some of Jamaica's biggest SDA churches. His protégés are everywhere, carrying his methods and theology forward. Gregory also published SDA study materials that circulate through Jamaica's Bible Workers Network. His teachings weren't just seen in churches, but also just in training programs. His family ties stretch in both Jamaica and the United States, creating cross-border influence that flows in both directions. Money, people, ideas, and power all move along those lines. What makes Gregory really fascinating is that his power base grows quietly but deeply, beneath the surface, invisible to outsiders but undeniable to insiders. He represents exactly what a transnational pastor should look like, commanding authority in both worlds. That dual positioning gives him access to resources, networks, and influence that single-nation pastors can never touch. So yes, sometimes leaving home is the smartest way to control wealth and power. Gregory might be known for his quiet influence, but this next pastor took it even further, building an entire television network to broadcast his message. Number 6. Dr. Glenn O. Samuels. Glenn Octavius Samuels is way more than just the pastor of a church. He oversees an entire region. Since 2010, Samuels has served as president of the West Jamaica Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, a role that gives him authority over 220-plus SDA churches across St. James, Hanover, Westmoreland, and parts of Trelawney. Every decision he made influenced tens of thousands of Adventists, making him one of the most powerful religious administrators in the country. Under his leadership, the West Jamaica Conference hosted evangelistic events drawing 5,000 to 10,000 people, including a massive 2016 crusade in Montego Bay that flooded the city with Adventist messaging. But it didn't end there. His sermons consistently go viral among SDA circles, racking up hundreds of thousands of YouTube views. What most people don't know is that Samuels also oversees dozens of schools, including Cornwall College's SDA-affiliated programs, Harrison Memorial, and a lot of other primary institutions. Education gives him that rare influence over the next generation, shaping not just their theology, but their values, work ethic, and worldview. He appears lots of times at national SDA conventions with delegations from the United States, United Kingdom, and Africa, positioning him at the center of international church networks. During the 2017 to 2018 murder spike in Western Jamaica, Samuels was instrumental in anti-crime campaigns, stepping into a space politicians had long abandoned. It's difficult to find one man who controls this much influence on the island. Every pastor assigned to every major town in Western Jamaica answers to him. That's just to say that his leadership covers over half the island. Yes, you heard that right. Samuels represents a truth most people miss. You don't really need a megachurch when you control hundreds of churches. Up next is a pastor who has the whole of Jamaica right at his fingertips. Number 5. Reverend Dr. Devin Dick. Being a senior pastor of Boulevard Baptist Church since the early 2000s was what announced Reverend Devin to the world, and from there, he leads a congregation of 1,500 to 2,000 active members in St. Andrew, but that's just his day job. We can say he sort of has his second pulpit, the Jamaica Gleaner. Devin Dick has been writing weekly political and religious commentary since at least 2010, giving him a platform that reaches hundreds of thousands of Jamaicans every single week. His columns cut through crime, governance, ethics, and hypocrisy with surgical precision. Powerful politicians, business leaders, and normal citizens read him. Now that's what you call undeniable power. Really a force to reckon with. Dick holds a PhD from the University of the West Indies, placing him in an elite group of academically trained clergy. His dissertation research became the foundation for his book, The Cross and the Machete, published sometime in 2010. The book is now used in tertiary courses at UWI and theological colleges. That means his ideas are now baked into how future leaders think about faith and resistance. But these are just the ground level of how his influence goes. He's appeared on national television programs, analyzing governance scandals and social issues. He's delivered prayers at multiple national functions attended by prime ministers between 2006 and 2022. He's preached abroad in the United States, United Kingdom, and Cayman Islands. But here's why Dick is dangerous. Most pastors only speak to their congregations, and it ends there. But Dick speaks to the whole nation every single week, in print, with credibility that comes from both academic expertise and spiritual authority. Yes, politicians come and go, but Dick owns a permanent seat at Jamaica's national conversation. And that kind of visibility is what builds the kind of soft power that governments just can't ignore. But if all of this sounds impressive, then what if I told you one man's global reach made him one of the most internationally connected Jamaicans alive? Number 4. Reverend Dr. Neville Callum. You probably have never heard of the name, yet his influence dwarfs nearly everyone on this list. Why? Because from 2007 to 2017, he served as General Secretary of the Baptist World Alliance, overseeing a global body representing 47 million Baptists across 121 countries. He was the first Jamaican and the first non-North American to ever lead the BWA. Let that sink in. A man from a tiny island nation ran one of the largest Christian organizations on earth. During his tenure, Callum delivered speeches in Brazil, Nigeria, England, South Korea, and the United States. He represented Jamaica at Vatican dialogues with Pope Benedict XVI and Pope Francis. These were high-level interfaith negotiations shaping policy across continents. The BWA's annual operational budget ran into the millions of US dollars, and Callum controlled how that money flowed, where it went, and which projects received backing. That's not spiritual leadership, that's geopolitical power. Back home, Callum had previously chaired the Jamaica Baptist Union Committee on Doctrine, shaping theological direction for one of Jamaica's oldest denominations. He played a major role in the 2015 BWA Congress in Durban, South Africa, and wrote papers on human rights and democracy that influenced Baptist policy worldwide. International Christian media outlets like Christianity Today sought him for interviews. His voice carried weight in rooms where prime ministers barely get a hearing. But even before his global rise, Callum served as a radio broadcaster on religious programs in Jamaica during the 1990s, building name recognition and trust. What makes Callum an unbeatable force is how he wielded institutional power on a scale that no Jamaican politician could match. While MPs fight for constituency budgets, Callum was directing resources across 6 continents. His decade at the helm of the BWA gave him connections in every corner of the Christian world. And just so you know, those connections don't expire. So yes, Callum's luxury was way beyond owning buildings. He owned influence, and in the game of power, that's the currency that never depreciates. Meanwhile, the next figure on our list didn't just shape modern Jamaica. He inspired the man who would change the entire black nation. Number 3. Alexander Bedward. Let's go back. Way back to the 1880s when Jamaica was still shackled by colonial rule and most black Jamaicans had no voice, no power, no hope. Here comes Alexander Bedward, a revivalist preacher who launched a movement in Augusttown that would terrify the British Empire itself. By 1895, Bedward had gathered over 30,000 followers. 30,000. That's more than any political party at the time. In fact, that was more than most political movements in the entire Caribbean. At the time, Bedward's compound operated as a full-scale commune with farmland, workshops, and communal housing. His followers produced goods sold in Kingston markets, creating an early form of cooperative economics that bypassed colonial systems entirely. The British knew exactly what that meant. Economic independence leads to political independence. So in 1895, they arrested him for sedition and charged him for gaining too much influence. They arrested him again in 1921 after he predicted a mass ascension event. But by then, the damage was already done. His movement had already reshaped how black Jamaicans saw themselves. Now, historians like Robert Hill have documented that Bedward's movement directly inspired Marcus Garvey's early thinking. Garvey, the man who would go on to launch the largest black nationalist movement in history, cut his ideological teeth watching Bedward organize, mobilize, and challenge the empire. During Bedward's peak years, his followers controlled Augusttown socially and economically. British colonial newspapers called him dangerous, which only amplified his reach. His sermons drew crowds that rivaled the 1938 labor protests, and those wouldn't happen for decades. Bedward proved something really vital. A pastor with vision, structure, and fearless conviction can reshape a nation's consciousness faster than any politician. Till today, his legacy still whispers through every liberation theology preached on the island today. But from the past, we now move to the present, to the man who trained hundreds of pastors across the Caribbean. Number 2. Reverend Marie Burbick Bailey. While most pastors wait decades to build influence, Marie Burbick Bailey started building hers at 17. Born in St. Anne, Jamaica, she attended Fern Court High School, where she became head girl in the 1990s, early visibility that marked her as a high achiever destined for leadership. But here's where her story takes an unexpected turn. At just 17 years old, she was hired by the Jamaica Herald as a journalist, which was probably the last thing anyone expected. During her journalism career, she won 2 national media awards, including Jamaica's first award for online journalism in 2008. But Bailey didn't stop at writing stories. She worked as a communications strategist for Jamaican government ministries, NGOs, and private sector organizations. That put her inside rooms that most ladies her age can only dream of in their lifetime. In 2013, she co-founded SUFER, Sisters United for Prayer, Healing, Empowerment, and Restoration, supporting survivors of abuse across Jamaica. Through counseling, empowerment workshops, social media training, and emergency assistance, she built a grassroots network of thousands of women who see her not just as a pastor, but as a lifesaver. That's a loyalty base money can't buy. Her whole life felt like a joyride. Then in 2018, Bailey migrated to the United States, and you would expect her to fade away from the minds of Jamaicans, but she even expanded her reach from there. She founded Marie Burbick Ministries International in Queens, New York in 2020, positioning herself as a transnational Jamaican pastor with a U.S. platform. Then she married gospel singer Robert Bailey, and together they stretched their minister far and wide. Bailey is exactly what you will can a digital age pastor, media-trained, policy-connected, and commanding strong influence in a men-dominated world. And last on the list is probably not what you'd be expecting. Number 1. Papa San. Papa San's story isn't your typical preacher. Born as Tyrone Thompson, he dominated Jamaica's dancehall scene throughout the 1980s and 90s with hits like I Will Survive and Legal Rights that charted internationally. But in 1997, everything changed. He converted to Christianity, and by the early 2000s, he'd fully transitioned into ministry, founding Our Father's Kingdom Ministries. Here's where most people get it wrong. They think he left money behind when he left dancehall, but that's completely wrong. Papa San still earns massive royalties from his pre-conversion catalog, music that continues selling decades later. So his wealth didn't start in the pulpit, as you might think. He went on to win a Stellar Award in 2014 for his gospel album, One Blood, collaborating with Grammy-winning Christian rappers like Lecrae and Da Truth. These are connections to America's multi-million-dollar Christian music industry. Today, Papa San performs at Christian festivals drawing 20,000 to 50,000 people across the United States. His son, Tyrone Jr., runs the JIFEM label, expanding the family's Christian music empire. Living in Florida gives him access to higher-earning ministry markets that Jamaican pastors could only dream of. While other ministers depend on tithes and offerings, Papa San built his empire on intellectual property, international tours, and strategic industry partnerships. His influence reaches back to Jamaica through music, media, and a ministry model that proves you certainly don't need a megachurch to build mega wealth. Which pastor shocked you the most? Drop your answer in the comments. Smash the subscribe button if you want to keep seeing more deep dives like this. The game is way deeper than you think, and now you know who's really playing it. Check out our next video on the richest black pastor in Nigeria who secretly owns the country.